All right, so let's start. Today is about styling, and if you look on the page, some stuff are going on already. That's the reason why you see that this styling, the logo is rolling. This thing is not just happening like that, though. It's actually coming from CSS, and that CSS is what is showing at the top here. So if I disable it, again, some CSS will still work, so that nothing like rolling again and everything is by things like. But if you still look at the text, you see that it's still working. Why is it working? Is because here the only one we disable is the app.css. But if you look at the main.jsx, inside that one too is importing this index.css. So if you look inside that one now, as you can see, there's a lot of CSS going on there too. And if I comment out everything, you see that everything will go back to the normal way your HTML used to start by default. But because they've already added a lot of CSS stuff, so and any CSS in this store like this index.css is what we refer to as a global CSS. And why is it global CSS? Because it's being imported inside this main.jsx. So whatever CSS import here, it's going to affect everything that is inside the app dot this app here. Now, this is the main component, and inside this main component, that's what you are displaying under component. So which means any CSS that you import from here, all your components are going to see the CSS, or the page in general is going to use whatever that is coming from this CSS here. But at some time, you only want to apply your CSS on a particular component like that. But it doesn't work like that too, because when you load the component, the CSS will still see, the browser will still see everything like that. But there's a way of solving it, and I'm going to show you different ways of applying the CSS on your element. But the first thing you need to know how to import your CSS. So you can just import it like your normal, way of importing anything that you want to use in a particular file. So since the CSS is in another file, so we need to use it here. It's not like that one that you're going to use link to include it. You can actually do it from your index, but you don't do that. You let the tooling to undo everything for you like that. And that's the reason why this index is not being loaded from here, because anything you want to load from here, you need to put it inside public. And we don't want to put it inside public. We want the tooling that we're using, which is the vits there, to couple, like bundle everything together and send it to the browser when there is needs for it like that. So the CSS that is here, you can't just go to this thing and say slash index.css. It will not show you because it's not inside public. If you remember, I said public, whatever you put inside it, you can have access to it from the URL like that. But we are not putting the CSS inside the public. And since we are not putting it there, the bundler or the tooling is going to bundle everything together and do all the necessary you need to do, and it's going to send it to the browser there. So if I open the browser, and if you go to the element, so inside the head, it will generate all the necessary stuff that you normally do there like that. This is not the logo that I want. So where's my CSS? As you can see, style type is this text.css, and as you can see, it's connected to this index.css. And if you expand it, you see that all those CSS that are here, it take everything and it put it there. So it bundled everything together like that. See, everything that is here, it's copy them and it put it directly inside the file. So you don't need to be doing it yourself. This tool is going to bundle everything together and send whatever you need to send to the browser there. And as you can see, some stuff are not working again. Why is it not working? It's because inside this inside this app.jsx, we disable this app inside this app.jsx, we disable this app.css. So since it's not seeing it, it will not send the CSS that is coming from that file. But if you want it to send it to the browser too, we can just activate the stuff. And as you can see, once I save it, you can see that it bundled that one too, and it send it to the browser there. And once you send it to the browser, all the content on the page, they are going to see everything. But this one is going to create a problem later on. This one is going to create a problem later on, but you're going to see how to solve it by using the module CSS, which is something you don't do before. It's normal CSS, but the way you'll be working with it is different from the way you work with the normal CSS there. And the advantage of module CSS is that is going to make sure that anywhere you are calling that particular CSS, any component that is calling it, that's the only the only place that that thing is going to be feasible. It will not feasible to, it will bundle everything to the browser, but whatever the name of your classes or whatever you are using to style all those things is going to add some random name to them, so that you will not have a clash in your CSS naming. Because for example here, what am I trying to say here? Look at it inside the index.css. So I want to create a class. So look at it now. You see what I'm trying to talk about now. So inside this place, I want to create a class for heading, and inside this heading, the color should be blue. So this is the color of this one, like that. So inside the index.css, we have this particular heading, which is setting the color to blue. So again, to this same kind of a class, inside my app.css, I want to reuse it. I want to use that naming too, because when you are working, there are some places that the naming will be the same thing. So here now, imagine that here too, we now have this dot heading like this, and inside it, the color of this one is yellow. Don't forget CSS. Whatever it says last, that's what is going to use like that. And if I save this one now, and then go to our component, inside our component, we have h1 there. So this h1 now, I want to give it class. What is it typing? I want to give it class y, class. But in Java here now, you can't just use class like that. So it have to be class name like this. But I will come on to this one. It's part of styling too. But in CSS, here, in the normal HTML, what you use is just class. But here we don't use class. Why? Because class is a keyword in JavaScript. Don't forget, when we are creating component, I told you that you can create component using functional function. I can create component too using class. So if you are using class here, this is a JavaScript file, even though it is JSX. JSX is just JavaScript extension, which means it's extending JavaScript in order for you to be able to type HTML code and CSS code and JavaScript code together. So you can't just come here and say you want to use class. This thing will be thinking you are dealing with, can you see now? It's complaining because class is a keyword in JavaScript. And what is keyword? Keyword are reserved identifier. So what it is reserved, you can't use them for any other thing. They have what the program is using, the language is using them for. You cannot use it for another thing. But you know that this thing is not clashing with our HTML class that we normally add. So the React will now come with another name that you cannot use in place of. So anyway, you need to use class. This is what you use, class name. But by the time the thing get to the browser, React will convert it to a proper class on that element. So if I inspect this element here, so let me inspect the element. So let me inspect the elements. Where is it? Coming. Yeah, so now once this stuff is saved, currently H1 is not having any class on it because I've not really saved the code. But once I save the code now, you see that what we type is class name. But by the time you get to the browser, it is class, because the React will do the magic behind the scene and convert this class name to class. So when you are working with your element and you need to give it a class, what you type is class name, not class, because class is a keyword in JavaScript. And since it's a keyword, you cannot use it for another thing. So, and what did React now do? They give you this class name. And once you type this class name, whatever class you pass there, it will generate the element. Then that class name will be renamed to a class, and you have it on your element. But look at it now. Look at what just happened. The stuff is using which color? Is using yellow. And where is the yellow coming from? The yellow is coming from this one. It's not applying the one that is coming from here. So how do I now talk to it that I want it to use this one, I don't want it to use the other one? We can use all those tricks that we normally use in normal CSS, which is by using this important. Any one of them that have important, it means it will override any CSS stuff that is to happen there before. So if I save it, it's going to use blue like that. Important means if there's any clashing somewhere, this is the one you must use. Don't follow any other rules, just follow the rules here. And why is it showing this add.css? It's because here we firstly include inside our main dot JSX, we include index.js. Then from there, followed by the app. But you know that inside the app, we are now including this app.css. So which means this is the last one that is going to see. And since it's the last one is going to see, that's why the CSS is overriding the one that is coming from the index like that. If the name is not clashing, you are not going to have problem. But there's no way you'll be working on a real stuff that you will not have a name that will not clash there like that. And in order for you to do this stuff in this way, we have another way of creating a CSS file known as a module CSS. So instead of you creating the normal CSS like this, you can create what we refer to as a module CSS. And whatever you are doing with that one now, it will only pick or it will only give you this style based on whatever that is going on inside that CSS. And what it's going to do is that the tooling is going to convert all the classes that, because what you'll be working with is class, not that you'll be selecting element. You create a class, and that class you load it on the element. So that class now, whatever name you are using, by the time you get to the browser, the tooling will have already add some random text to the class, so that that class will not be clashing with another component class that is using the same name. And what do I mean by that too? So let me create another file here. So I will come back into this one later on, but for now let me quickly create another file, and the name of this file is just going to be what can I call it? So let me just call it header.jsx like that, which is a component. Again too, that's going to be header.css like that. So inside this header.jsx, we want to create our component. So how do you create your component? Create a function, but whatever the name that you're using, just make sure that it's the same thing. It's not a must, but whatever you're exporting out, just make it its default. So inside this header like this, so what I want to do, I want to return my header. So just to return the header like this, and inside the header, just to create some brand like to represent the header of the site like that. So inside this one, I'm going to have a, inside here I'm going to have logo. This thing is not really doing anything, it's just to showcase the clashing of the CSS there. So inside the nav, I'm going to have the a, and inside this a, I'm going to have let me put this one pricing. So apart from this one, I'm going to have login, and this one I'm going to have sign up like that. So in order for this component to be useful, we need to export it out, and that's why he's crying right now. He's saying that as you can see, file is not, so it's not exported, so we need to export it. I know we need, anytime you're dealing with a component and it's a major component inside that file, you're going to export it as default. So we need to export default. What are you exporting out as default? We're exporting header like that. So where do we use this thing? Because it's not going to come out at all like that. So we need to come inside this app. And where do we want to use it? So we want to call our header here like that. So header, where is the header coming from? You know, it's coming from another file. We need to import it, because you can't just do it like this. It will complain that where is this thing coming from like that. Even though it's not complaining right now, it's because the VS Code is still loading. That's why it's not showing anything. That's why you can see now, yeah, that's saying it that it doesn't know where this header is coming from like that. So we need to import it. What am I pressing? So press Ctrl space bar on that line. At the end of the text there, it's going to show you, as you can see, it detected that the stuff is coming from here. It's not showing you. You can do it yourself from the top. Import the name, the component, then from wherever it's coming from there like that. And if I save it, no issue yet, because we've not started, we've not imported that header.css inside that file too. As you can see, everything is showing at the top here like that. So what did I want to do? There is one h1 here, which is having class heading like that. So inside this our CSS, so let me select all my a tag. I want them to have a color of let me use orange red, let me use orange like this. So they've already removed the text decoration like that. Text transform like this should be uppercase. What's wrong with my VS Code that is slowing down like this? So after that one, I want to have another thing here, which is going to be that same class there like that. So here, the color of this one is going to be green. like this. And where did I want to apply this one? So where did I want to apply this one? So let me save it. Nothing will happen yet. Why nothing will happen? Because we are not using this header.css anywhere. But we want to use it here. It's not important that you name it header.css. You can name it anything, but wherever you want to use it, you have to use the same name to import it. So here we need to import. What are we trying to import? From the same folder or from the same place, dot slash mean current folder. And what is current folder? Which is this one here, which is the source. So inside that source, I want to load this my header.css like this. So if I save it, you see that all our A should kind of change. Can you see what is that happening? See what happened now? The color now changed to green. Why is it now something that is coming from header is overriding something that, see this H1, it have that same class here, heading, and inside the header.css, I have the same class. Headers of CSS have the heading, color is green. But inside the app.css, the same class, but the color is yellow. But by the time we load it on the page, the header.css is affecting is affecting the H1 that is inside the app. Why is it affecting them? It's because here, this is how it works. Header.jss is loading header.css. But don't forget the header.jss is being used inside app.js. So which means by the time it gets here, we've already loaded this one has been loaded already at the top, app.css. So by the time it gets here, to see that there is header.css inside that place. It will now load that one too. So which means what is saying last is this header.css. And if you check the page, you see that this thing will now be affecting what you don't want it to affect. Because that one's supposed to be yellow, not green. And that's where this module CSS comes in to solve the problem of this clashing of CSS here. Because CSS doesn't have sense like that. Once you see the way your style arranged and you see that it's the same thing, the last one will always win. But that's how CSS works. So if I go inside the head, you see that first is loading the one that is coming from the index. So as you can see, it load the index first. So that's what is seen from the main.css. So when you see the app.css, you see that it's loading that one to app.css. Again, it's now seeing header.css, which is loading header.css. So that one now will now be the third one. And since this one is the last one, whatever you have here, if you have a clash from the other one, it will override them, which is now doing what we don't want it to do on this page here. So when you are working, you should put in mind that if you are creating all your CSS file in different components, that doesn't mean it will not affect any other component when you bring them together. The one you use last, that's the one that will override every other CSS that you load on the page there, like that, based on how you are using the component like that. We use the component app.js inside main.js. That's why it override the main.js. Again, too, the header.js is being used at the app. So since it's going to see it last, then that means the CSS too will override everything that you have inside this app.css. So how do you solve this problem? The way of solving this problem here is by using what we refer to as modules CSS. And what is module CSS? A module CSS is just you creating a CSS file. And inside your CSS file, you are going to be having classes. Then you can now load the classes on all the elements that you want. But by the time this thing is being sent to the browser, the tooling is going to add some random text into your CSS. Look at it currently here now. If I right click on this element here, you see that look at it. You see that it's showing the heading. But as we are using module CSS for this app here now, as we will use the module CSS for this one, you see that it will add some random text to that particular heading. So that by the time it loads it, since that one is not having random text, there's no way it to be the same thing as heading. Once there is a little change in between these texts here, they are not the same thing. And that's what that tooling will be doing behind the scene. It will add some random text to your classes there. And by the time you get to the browser, there's no way CSS will make mistake with them, because heading it does the same thing as heading with underscore, or the one that has some random text along with it there like that. So what do we do to make this thing to work the way we want? So what we can do now is to create a module CSS. So here now I'm going to create a module. And how do you create the module CSS? You say the same. You type your name of the CSS file, followed by dot, followed by module, then followed by CSS. So the only thing we are just adding is this dot module that is in between. Know what we had before is just add dot CSS, but in between the app and CSS, you need to add this module there. And this module is the one that you are going to use now. But the way you work with this one is quite different from the way you are working with the normal CSS. So here too, you can quickly create our heading just like the way it is. But now we want this one to be color of let me just say I don't want to use that yellow. So let me just use yellow green like that. It's clashing with this one. So let me use other color. Which other color? Let me use this hot pink like that. So if I save it, you don't just call this one anyhow. It has the way you have to call this one so that the thing can work the way you are expecting it to work. So inside this app now, when you want to import your CSS, just say import, then followed by the file. But we don't do it like that. You are going to do it in this way. So you are going to do import, whatever it's coming from there, you save it somewhere. But here now I'm calling it styles. You can call it anything, and whatever you have here, that's what this thing is going to give you. And what am I calling it from? As you can see, this thing is giving me. So what I'm doing here is that everything that is here, I'm saving them inside this place as object. So you can see all this thing they are having dots. So like this dot heading here is going to create object, and inside that object there is going to be a key for heading. So if I have this one here, if I have large text, so it's going to create the key inside the object, and the key is going to be that large object. So if I use 1.5 here like that, so whatever you are creating here, they have to be class. And again, to these modules doesn't support all the goodies that you have in your normal CSS. It doesn't support all of them. So here now you can't just be selecting elements. You can't select element. Whatever you have to do here, you have to use all those classes selector here. You can't do element because whatever that is you are going to be importing from here, look at it, you see that we are saving it somewhere. Not that it is direct. This one is direct. It will just copy everything for us. But here now, everything that is coming from here, we are putting it inside the style. We now be the one that will be calling them one by one. So you can't come here and select element. You can't select element. What you always do with this one, create a class, and anywhere you need that class, you are going to call it there like that. So when you are working with the modules, classes is what you'll be using there. Create class, put whatever style you want to use. Then on the element that needs that particular style, this is not the way you are going to call it. So to call it, we need to use that styles that is coming from up. And you know that anytime you want to use any JavaScript stuff, don't forget you need to use expression. So which means here now we're going to do styles, then dot heading. So this one now, as you can see, we are only focusing on the heading that is coming from styles. And where style is coming from, style is loading everything that is here. So by the time the tooling is done processing everything, it will add some random text to all your heading, all your classes that you created here. So any classes that you created here, by the time you get to this page, the tooling will add some random text to them. You don't need to care about the random text and what is going on. It knows how to create the selector, and where you are putting it knows how to connect them together. Your own is just to give it what you want to use from that modules file, and by the time you get to the browser, can you see now that it's now using that pink? It did not use any other one from the side. But if you check it, what is actually doing is that it's creating some random, your text will still be there, that heading will be there. Can you see now? It's now joining some random text to it, so that the thing will not clash with any other heading that you define somewhere. So when you're using modules, classes is what you always use there. And once you add it, and how do you add the stuff? So what you do is to just call this in. So you have import, then call it whatever you want to call it. So I'm calling it star here. If I want, I can just call it K. I can just call it K like that. But right now, I'm calling it styles. But right now, I can call it K too if I want. But whatever name you use here, that's what you'll be using to reference all the classes that is coming from that particular file there like that. So since I have K here, so it means when I want to use anything from that place, it will be K dot. But what is dot what? Dot whatever the name of the class that you have there. So since I call it heading here, that's the reason why you see that I'm calling it heading here like that. So if I change the name from here, so maybe I call it this H1 like that. So anytime I want to do this, can you see that it's not working again? Because it cannot find what I'm calling here again. There's no heading. And since there's no heading, see that on that element, it did not put the class. But now if I change it from this heading to this H1, and if I save it, so since that H1 is part of it, can you see? It will always add some random text to it, and your CSS too, it will do it like that. So there is part of the CSS that is a class like this. And by the time you check that class, you see that it's only affecting this particular component that you're using it there. If you use it in another component, you can actually reuse that stuff in another component. It will still create another random name so that these things are not clashing with each other there like that. So module CSS is useful anytime you have different component and the name you want to be using from their CSS can clash with each other. What do? You use a module CSS there. And how do you create a module CSS? Create your normal CSS, but it needs to have module before the dot CSS. So if it is header that you want to create module for, you just need to do header dot modules then dot CSS. But when you want to import it to, the way you import it is different from the way you import normal CSS. When you're importing normal CSS, just do import, then followed by the CSS you want to import. You don't need to specify that you are saving it somewhere, no. But anytime you are dealing with modules, then you save it into a particular name, and that name you keep calling all the classes that you define inside that this. But this will only work with class, so you use it with classes like that. And again too, there's another problem with this one. That's why I don't really like this one too. You can't be doing something that is inside another descent. For example, here I have this H1, but you know this one is selecting the span that is inside it. So I want the color to be blue like this. So what am I doing? So what I want to do here is that I want to make the span that is inside H1, I want the color to be blue like that. So what do? So we save it. There is nothing will happen because we don't have any stuff there. So here now, I can just go to the front of it, create a span element like this. Come outside, VS Code, what's going on? Create a span for me. So inside the span, my span like this. So if I save it, and as you can see, we have this thing like that. So again, I want to use some crazy stuff here, but it's not giving me what I want right now. But later on, you're going to see what I'm trying to talk about here. So this is one way of applying CSS on your element by creating a CSS file. And once you create a CSS file, you import it at the top here, wherever you want to inside the component. But there might be a problem with the naming that you are using there. So if there's a clash in between the naming there, the last CSS that the tooling is loading will always win. So even though you are not using it inside that component, we did not, even though you are not using it inside that component, but because that component is somewhere under that particular stuff, it will still affect what is going on there like that. And that is why you see that before, when we are not using, so if I disable this one like that, and if I go back with the way it is before, which is by using H1 like this, it will still work because there's no clash again, because this one is H1, but the one we have there is heading. So the name is on the same thing. So it will still work the way it's supposed. No, I'm supposed to use heading because it's coming from that one. So if I use my heading like this, as you can see, is now being affected by what is coming from header.css like that. But if you don't want it to happen, what you do is to create a module CSS. And with the module CSS, you are going to be creating classes. And from there, you load the modules. And how do you load it? To load module CSS, you import it like you are importing a component. But just that the naming you are using here, that's what you are going to be using to access whatever classes that you want to use on that element here. Like this one here now. So, but normally you only see that name as styles, but you can call it anything. So the reason why I'm naming it style so that anybody that is reading your code later or you say you know what is coming from that place. So you are going to be having a lot of naming. But what is this naming all about? So once you see it, oh, this is a style. It's actually for style. But when you just say K dot, where's K? Where's the meaning of K here? Why are we using K? But once you name it style, you already know what is going on with the stuff. And if I save it now, you see that it's going to use what is coming from there. And there's no way this one will override it because we are loading it directly. And by the time you get to the browser, this thing is going to generate some random name along with your class. You don't need to worry about that one. Just give it whatever name you want to use. But based on the name you are using, it will add some random text along with it there like that. So this is one way, which is a way that we're going to be using a lot because I always work with external CSS. But it's not every time that you'll be working with external CSS. You can actually work with your style, which is the inline CSS. So to work with the inline CSS is different from the way you do it with your normal HTML. You know, in the normal HTML, when you want to work with it, what you just do is you do the style, then you set it, and you put whatever you need to put here. For example, maybe you do back, but if you look at it, it's complaining already. Background is red. We don't do it like this. How you do it with normal HTML there like that because this is inline CSS. And where did I put it? I'm putting it at the wrong side because this is wrong side there like that. So let me put it at the correct side. So it's supposed to be here in the opening tag. So we have the style, and inside this style, what did I want to do? I have the background to be red like this. But this is not how we do it. This is not how we work in React. So to work, you have to use objects. So to work with this thing, you have to use objects. You can see nothing is showing. And the reason why nothing is showing is because the thing has already output error in the console. So if you go to the console, you see that there is an error going on there telling us that we are doing something wrong. Can you see? It's telling us that don't forget I told you that this thing is not normal HTML. Is is JSX element. It will not transfer it to a proper HTML this, and as you can see, can you see it doesn't know how to interpret what I did here because that's not the way you do your inline there. So when you want to do inline, you have to pass objects into it. So yeah, because everything, so can you see you have to pass object. But if you look at it, I use double. The first one is to tell you that we want to do a JSX expression, while the one that is inside is actually the object. The first one, don't forget, anytime you want to do it with any JavaScript, you need to put it inside curly brace. But you know that object is JavaScript, and that's what this second curly brace is there for. And inside this second curly brace, that's where you put all your CSS that you want to apply on this element. But here, it follows the JavaScript way. Anywhere you need to have hyphen, you can't have hyphen here, you know, there's nothing like that in that. So here, if I use color, so this is going to be red, the color is going to be red, then the background. Here now, you cannot do something like this. So this is error because you cannot use that stuff. So anyway, you need to use hyphen there. The next letter is going to be capitalized like this. So background color, which is going to be let me put white like this. And if I save it, can you see now? It's applying it. So if I want to apply padding, I just need to go to next line. So padding, which is going to be, you can apply the normal way. So the top and bottom will be 1 rem, left and right will be 2 rem. But the way you are doing here is quite different from the normal HTML. So this is what we call the inline. But I don't like this style. As you can see, you are jam packing the CSS with this element. And so, you know, some style you want to reuse them in different places on that same component, not another component inside that same component. So you can quickly use this one. You know, this one that I just say style.h1. If I want to use it in another h1 on this page, what I just need to do is to create the h1. Everything here is let me create it at the top here. So before everything, so let me create another h1 here. It's almost time. So this is going to be testing like that, and I can reuse that my class. So here, class name should just be not you. We're not dealing with this. So it's going to be style.h1, and if I save it now, you see that I have the same styling. But assuming it is this inline that I'm doing now, what I have to do is to do copy and paste. Now imagine that you need to change things. That means you'll be changing it in 2 different places or everywhere you're using. Now I'm still using it the same component, not that I'm using it in another component like that. So if I want to make any changes now, you know, I only do it once. Here now we said the color should be this hot pink. What I can do is just to do the text transform like this, which is going to be upper case like that. And if I save it, you see that it's affecting here and it's affecting this one. But whatever style you are dealing with this inline, it really affect that particular element. So there's sometimes you use this, it's just in rare case that you're going to use this the inline style like that. But most of the time, what you only deal with is using the class name like that, and you now connect to your external CSS. But the external CSS can either be the module CSS or the normal CSS. So anything that you know that it is generic, you can use your normal CSS. But if you know that you only want this thing to work inside a particular component, what do you use? You are going to use the module CSS, because this thing, it will make sure that that thing is only available where you are importing it. The only place that you import it, that's the only place it's going to be used. Even though we're using header here, the thing will never link into this header because you do not call it inside this header. You're only calling it inside the add.gss, and that's where modules comes in, that you always use like that. There's another way too, by connecting to the Tailwind CSS, but for now we don't need that one. We want to deal with our normal CSS like that. And when we work on a project, we are going to arrange everything correctly, because we just pack everything together here, because we are trying to explain a lot of things and they are the same thing. So that's why I'm putting everything together. But when you're working in a real sense, you are going to separate each component into their own file. And as you can see here, I was able to create another component here, but it is in a different file. But and then import it inside this one here. What's it? All right. So as I was saying there, um, you won't be jam packing everything together. You need to structure your project in a way that will make life easier for you when you need to modify anything later on. So you won't be creating all the components inside a single file. You are going to separate each component into their own file. But we used to have some structure that we normally use here like that. It's just a simple structure like that you can use. And one of the structure here is that if you look at it, inside this your project, it already generated this folder for you, the public. It generated this source, and then you have the other files. So inside this source here, you can actually generate a folder for all the components. You are going to generate a folder for all the routes. What I mean by a route component, or the pages that you want. Because you're going to have like home page, you are going to have like a sign up page and so forth like that. So all of them are components, but there are some components that are meant for pages, and there are some components that are meant for you coupling them together to form the entire page. So on the page, like home page now, on it, you can have the header component, you have the hero section component, you have the card component, and so forth like that. On the login page, you are going to have the input component, you are going to have the button component, and so forth like that. So all those components that they are not acting like page, they are going to be in a folder known as this component here. It's not more so, but this is just a simple structure that you can follow there. So we have component. So all those components that this is not component, this is not this. So all those components that they are not really pages, they are going to be here. So you can put all those ones so that will be pages, but I normally separate them. So I have another this into that is going to be pages. So any component that is meant for pages will be here. But pages will now be using all the component from here. So this component here, all this one here, they're the one you can use in different pages. But this one here, they're the one that are meant for a specific page. So like home page, you're going to have a component for home page. For example, here, I'm going to have a component, and the name of the component is just going to be homepage.jss like this. Again, if I want to work on the maybe dashboard, so I want to work on the login page. So here I'm going to have the login page, and as you can see at the end of each name, there is page, because you are going to be calling them. So anywhere you are calling them, you want to differentiate page component and a normal component. So any one of them that have pages at the end, you know that it is page component. While the one that will be here, they are just normal component. For example, you can have the input.jss like that. So this component now is for input. Again, you are going to have something like a button.jsx. Again, here you are going to have like the header.jss like that. And apart from this, there's another thing I used to do too, which is the layout component, which are the one that you can use like to create a layout. When we're working on a real proper page, you see how they say, but yeah, I normally have another folder too known as layout. And as you can see, these are recognized folder name. That's why you see that it's showing icons here. So any other that is showing icons, it means they are recognized, or the standard folder that people used to use a lot like that. So we use this layout to create a component that is meant for layout. You know, on dashboard, there's a layout. And what do you invite as layout? You know, you are going to have the header, you have the sidebar, you have the footer. But in between, that's where you now display the page are there. But the same way it is on the dashboard, that's the same way it's going to be maybe like on the profile page, but you know it's still part of dashboard, just that you are showing another content. So instead of you calling this in again and again, you now create a layout. You are going to see how to create a layout when we are dealing with routing like that, but we are not in the routing part yet. So when we get to the routing, that's when we talked about this one. But when you are dealing with any project, you always have them like this when you need a page of. But if you don't need any page or layout, these two can go. The only thing you just have is component. And inside each one of this one too, you know, yeah, they don't really create their file. I don't really create their CSS and whatever stuff. So you can actually, you know, create a folder for each one of them too. So instead of you making this in to just be button like this, you can actually create a button folder. So this one will be inside button, and inside that button folder, that's where you're going to have the button dot module, then dot, don't forget you're dealing with module. Whatever you are dealing with this one, you don't want it to leak out so that it doesn't affect any other content that is using the same class name like that. So whatever you'll be doing here now, it will only be imported inside this file. And once you import this one, there's only the CSS from here will now link into the app or any other component that is being used here like that. So you can actually do it like this so that you are creating a group for each one of them. So the button, whatever that is to happen to button will be inside this folder. Again, to it, there is going to be a folder for header. Whatever that is to happen with header will be inside it. Maybe like the nav bar, you have the header, you have the sidebar, everything will be inside that particular folder there like that. You are going to see how we are going to structure all this in when we work on that project tomorrow. So we are going to start with the structure of the project. Then from there, we now start putting everything together like that. So this is where we just stop. Tomorrow we continue from